if anybody had noticed during the day, this theme's bubbled up a little bit. Earlier today, David from Mattel talked about how Mattel had such a passionate fan base that they were able to really kind of launch into a lot more content and grow content around their toy lines and really become bigger brands. Scott from AT&T talked about how sports, connecting with those fans of the sports, really let them lean really deeply into that sports as a platform to launch their new brand of connecting. So, with that said, I want to take just a few minutes and go down the line and ask my panelists here to give a little introduction to themselves, kind of what brought them to their current role and what they're doing in their current role.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Paul, for hosting the Brand Innovators. It sounds like a great and impressive space. I'm Nick Brien. This is my first time on, let's call it the sales side, on the product side of the gaming industry. It's most exciting after 30 years on the agency side, working in France. Some of whom I've met here. So it's been, you can tell from my accent, started in Europe, came to the US 20 years ago. And now the CEO of Enthusiast Gaming, which is the world's leading #1 independent platform. What brought me here was a call from a headhunter. What made me take the decision to join was the exciting space of the gaming and entertainment industry. Thank you.
I think we're on now. I'm Frederick. I'm, as Jason mentioned, the CMO of the LA Rams. Starting my 3rd season this coming September. I will say that the season 1, the first movie, was incredible. Sequel? The trilogy, just wait for it. Prior to the Rams, I was the global CMO of Ticketmaster and Live Nation. Got to see some incredible entertainment all across the globe. What brought me to the Rams was a conversation with my daughters. The two of them had said, I don't want stuff from Taylor Swift's Green Room. I don't want to go to the NBA playoffs. I'd like you to be home. And so that put me on a quest to find the right opportunity closer to home here in LA. And I could not have picked a better culture, a better organization, a better forward-thinking ownership group that has every intention of leaving LA a better market, and we found it. And so that alongside, you'll get to open SoFi Stadium, a $5.5 billion stadium for the first time to fans, culminate your first season with hosting a Super Bowl, and a long march up to the 2028 Olympics, where the opening and closing ceremonies will be held at SoFi Stadium. It sounded too good to be true. I'm still pinching myself and excited for what this season will bring, so thanks.
Thanks, Kathryn. Brien Borkowski, Senior Vice President of Marketing for FanDuel. It'll be 2 years for me come July. I used to lead media and subscriber acquisition for Hulu before coming over to FanDuel. I miss the entertainment industry, but absolutely love the sports industry. As a sports guy at heart, you can find me on the golf course most weekends, or playing basketball, doing something of the sorts, or just watching sports in general. But for me, this was an opportunity to really deepen the connection of the fan to sports. There's no deeper way to me than sports betting and enjoying and being part of the moments and part of the sports experience at large. So it was really interesting for me to figure out how to actually change sports and change how we watch it, change how we enjoy it, and deepen the connection of the fans to the game. For me, it's all about my love for sports in general, and FanDuel is all about the love of the game. So it was really a perfect fit for me. Now I lead all acquisition and retention marketing, so couldn't be happier, and it's a really exciting time.
Well, excellent. Obviously, we have some experts up here, especially when it comes to very passionate fan bases, both entertainment as well as sports. Obviously, any brand has its own fans. We even look at like In-N-Out's secret menu and the passion people have for sharing their own secrets. So the question is, fans have a deep emotional connection with their brands. A lot of the times it becomes part of their own personality, especially Rams fans. Definitely are first and foremost Rams fans flying flags out and wearing their jerseys. But the question is, like, what do you learn from your fans, and how do you take those learnings to apply to the rest of your marketing campaigns? Start with you.
I think that when we talk about the marketing we do for the Rams, it's all about deepening that emotional connection and deepening that emotional investment. And so you can't meet that moment with a commercial message. It really is about creating and sparking that ongoing dialogue. When Joe and I were talking, we talked about the very first time I watched fans walk into the building at SoFi Stadium, having been at the Coliseum and its great storied heritage past, and then going a whole season through COVID where the stands were empty. We were playing in SoFi for the very first time, and it's hard to play a game that is fed and fueled off of the energy of the crowd, and to play that to an empty stadium. Thankfully for us, it gave us practice of taking one of the most technologically advanced buildings and figuring out how fans would be engaged, how that interactivity would work. But it did come down to really navigating that first season with our fans. What did they need to get hyped in that moment? And that's just the game day experience. I think constantly thinking through what our fans need from us, what they want from us at any given touch point, and thinking about how we can meet that moment with authenticity. As I said, 5-12 is not a great record to be coming off of. And when we started developing the ethos for our draft campaign, which launched 2 days before the draft, we haven't sniffed a first round pick since 2017. So trying to find a way to inject ourselves into the moment and really capture that moment. We met it with an authenticity that, guess what? We know ourselves. We know what we showed up last year. We can't do that again. So a very honest message of we've got to go back into the lab, and we're buying and tethering our inspiration from some of the greats. You think about a lab, you think about Brian Paul, and you think about Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston, right? Famous lab chemists. And you think about how they build magic. You think about Diplo and how he builds magic. And then there's no one who throws a better party than Cheech Marin. So, and you throw yourself into the well of what do your fans need. And so I think a lot of that is insight driven, but it's also about meeting the moment where it is and not trying to just ice over it and say it's all gonna be okay.
Excellent. And Brien?
I touched on this a little bit in my intro around deepening our connection to the fans, similar to you. It's interesting in that there's when you think about sports betting, and obviously it's wagering, you're putting your own money in what you believe. And there's a famous quote from the movie Moneyball where Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt are talking at the end, and he says, "It's not about the money, it's about what the money represents." And to me, it's about putting yourself or showing that you believe not only in your team or believe in your instinct or believe in the hard work that you put into understanding the game, but it's, I hate the phrase putting your money where your mouth is, but it's showing that belief in those instincts, and that's helping you enjoy not only the success but also the failure of the team that you love or the player that you love, because you can place individual wagers as well. So it's how do we find ways to create that emotion, right? Sports to me, it's the ultimate unifier. It's where people from all kinds of different backgrounds, diversity, different groups, can come together and all get behind the same team, just like the LA Rams do. And how do you deepen that connection in a way where they can actually feel the success or feel the failure of their team, even more so than just being a fan, is all how we think about it.
I just want to build on that there's a lot of similarity and there's some differences in the sense that when we think about esports to sports, there's that level of intensity and the level of passion. I think when I look at the gaming spectrum, it really does, it's on such a broad spectrum from those who are most intensely involved and those who are more casual gaming. But we see a world where the authenticity that you're both talking about is exactly the same in the sense that the community is important. To be part of it, it's a true, authentic, emotional engagement. And I've come to see our audience as gamers as the most engaged on the history of the planet, as opposed to those who have been manipulated through the technology. We live in the attention economy, and everything that we as brands are trying to do is to create loyalty. I mean, our job is to turn a suspect into a prospect, into a buyer, into an advocate. But we want the advocacy because in loyalty is profitability. And I'm most excited in this kind of panel when we're talking about authentic communication that isn't manipulated through the technology or the systems that we see in many of the technology of the digital platforms. This is raw, real, authentic content, leveraging the power of community through both their engagement and whether they're playing or whether they're communicating. And I'm just realizing the amount of opportunity brands have to be engaged with this in the right way. But at the same time, across the landscape of all the different gaming and the gaming communities we're working with, the practices are different, but the principles are the same. And the principles are authenticity, as you've said, trust, and to be responsive. And to be very responsive, because what we're learning, what I'm certainly learning with the gaming community, is especially when we're talking about some of the league players, they are very vocal, and they expect to be heard, and they expect to have a direct conversation. So I think that's really one of the most exciting parts of fandom. When we think about fandom from that ancient word fanatic, it's about the loyalty at a truly emotional state. And I think that's something that brands can harness in a way that, as you said, doesn't become overly commercialized, it becomes more natural and more authentic within the process.
So along that lines, we talk a lot about authenticity and passion, and as you're engaging with your fans and you're communicating with your fans, Nick, we'll start with you just with the esports. What types of metrics should we be looking at when we're engaging fans to know that the communication efforts and the campaigns we're executing are successful? Is there a different set of metrics that you would look at versus a broader campaign or a consumer campaign?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I've certainly challenged since I've arrived that if we have audiences of gamers who are so engaged, why are we talking about conventional media metrics? And we're talking about, obviously, reach or frequency levels. I mean, again, clients and marketeers are looking for business outcomes. But we get to the business outcomes through the most effective marketing metrics that are truly measuring impact, not just their ROI. So it's very clear for me that when we're looking at time spent on site, repeat, whatever and it varies according to the site and the channel we're working at, but we have very clear metrics both for the side of the business where we're publishing games, as well as for the communities, on the fan sites, on the education sites, on the community sites. What are the direct metrics that indicate a returnability, as well as a level of engagement, a level of conversation around it? It's everything to avoid being stuck at a media metric, because this isn't an audience, these are enthusiasts, and they are gaming enthusiasts and fans.
I love and hate this question at the same time. For anyone that knows me, I am an analytical marketer at heart. I can nerd out about media mix modeling, attribution, conversion lift testing, all of that fun stuff. And then I come over to FanDuel and we have no historical data, and you kind of have to go off of your gut. Really challenges you in a lot of ways, but I constantly push my team to figure out ways to break through that are break the model. Every model we've built, every understanding we have of history, how do we break that and elevate it to a different level? If you look at what we did with Rob Gronkowski and the Kick of Destiny during the Super Bowl, Love or hate that he missed it,
I
but
really did think you made it for a second.
it was something that we literally took a swing. We had no idea what it was going to do. We wanted to differentiate ourselves and stand out. And there really was no metric behind it that we could look at and say, hey, this was wildly successful. It had great social sentiment. We looked at impressions and all the typical things. But one of the most intangible benefits is that we talked a lot about when you become more culturally relevant and talked about, there's other brands, other organizations that then want to work with you. We've had so many different big major brands come to us and say, how can we partner with you in next year's Super Bowl campaign? And that allows us to not only tap into their existing customers, but to partner with them in bigger ways and get the word out differently. So that's something that we can't measure it, we can't put a number behind it, but from our gut instincts and just from being marketers, we understood the need to take a swing, and so far it's been pretty successful.
I appreciate that Brien said that because I am a bona fide nerd at heart, and I have been for a long time. And when I got, and it was what made us at Ticketmaster and Live Nation so very, very profitable. But when I got to the Rams, it became one prevailing truth, which is if we grow fandom, everything else will come. It will all feed off the flywheel. We'll grow revenue, we will grow engagement, we will grow all of these things, but it all starts here. And it gave me and my teams an incredible North Star to focus on. But through that, I could still exercise my nerd flex by saying, how do we unpack that? How do we really understand what levers are generating meaningful and sustainable growth across fandom, knowing fandom has changed so much in sports in such a short period of time with the advent first of daily fantasy into sports betting. The complexity of sports fandom has changed. The real kernel of value is the player. It's no longer the league or the club, and so how did the club interact with that? I was very, very sad to see Jalen Ramsey leave for the Miami Dolphins. And I, as a marketer, was concerned that that would create headwinds for our growth. But we can still be part of those conversations. We will always remain part of his legacy. So how do you lean into that? How do you acknowledge where those potential speed bumps across growing your fandom will look like? And how do you really remain vigilant to the audiences that you know not only could see the value, but could be in that engaged dialogue with you?
I think that's a very good point, because the opportunity to fuel the fandom and the community with new inspiration isn't always going to be served by pure metrics that we've had for the last 10 years in the performance media world. So it's going to be mid-low funnel, and it's about the conversion to the transaction. That doesn't necessarily attract, as you've said, joint partnerships. We have a wonderful partnership with the NFL for Tuesday night gaming. We signed up for season 1, 2. We're in conversations with other sports leagues now who want to reach the next generation of whether it be millennial, Gen Z, and it's our opportunities collectively to fuel brands' involvement that is truly creative and original and surprising and adds value to the community, to the fans, as opposed to just being in a business where we're looking to drive a transaction. And I think this is that combination of, yes, the metrics, not just to guide what we do and the analytics to prove the efficacy of what we do, but to bring in outside thinking to create that 1 on 1 makes 10. I mean, I think that's a huge opportunity here.
Absolutely, and kind of going beyond that, you've got your core group of fans. Obviously, you all work on brands that the fans really power what you do. As you grow, and as you are looking to expand your audience to new consumers, how do you kind of stay true to your brand and your fans and not alienate them as you're really kind of, especially thinking of bigger brands, maybe an automotive brand or someone who still has that core group of people that are fans of certain models of cars. How do they reach those big reach goals and those conversions? Are you seeing a need for that in with your products, or are you do you have advice for those other brands?
I think that if you look at the Rams history, right, having been here in LA many decades ago, then sort of the travel to St. Louis and then the return trip home, there's a lot of different pockets of fandom to stitch together. And I think when you think about how that traverses, for us, the one uniting thing is the values that we have in the organization. And I think that the way that those impute stitch the work that we do together, right? The focus on leaving LA, a core value of ours is service, right? And many of you in the audience work with us to ensure that there are different investments across the pockets of LA, whether that's in schools, with community groups, with different dignitaries and municipalities all across LA, and now that's starting to open up to a global market. The one thing that doesn't come across contrived is sticking really, really close to those values, whether it's service, whether it's the way that we think about innovation and redefining what tomorrow's status quo will be as an industry leader. And so thinking through those elements and how they stitch together is the way that we can traverse from casual fan or prospect to diehards, knowing we don't change who we are.
I would say, from my perspective, it's about an evolution. The gaming industry is now so huge and diverse. There's 3.2 billion people gaming. We have 38 different businesses across different aspects of the gaming industry, from the hardcore all the way through the community to casual to live events. And I think the opportunity is that I'm seeing early on is how the overall gaming industry recognizes and continually evolves for a younger audience as well as a more diverse audience, where we're seeing Gen Z and Millennial really care about sustainability, and they care about equality, and they care about control. There's a greater consciousness of how we are operating as a form of entertainment, but also as a form of business. So to your point, it's about a natural evolution. I think when we think about growth, it's not just more customers, it's also loyalty. It's that stickiness to what we're doing based on principles that align. And to that end, we've just got to be a listening organisation. And the industry has got to do a better job of listening and responding to what people are looking for.
We have a very interesting and specific problem of new customers versus existing customers as we scale. Especially as you see that there's a lot of competitive offers out there. If you bet $5, you get $200 in your account. Us compared to DraftKings and BetMGM and everyone, it's hyper competitive offer focused stuff, right? But then you have our current customers sitting there going, well, what's in it for me? And we used to run some all customer offers. We had one unique one called Spread the Love, where the more people that bet it, the spread would actually move. So it would become basically a guaranteed bet, a guaranteed win if enough people bet the same market. But as you know, as our customer base gets much bigger, now those offers become incredibly expensive. So now you have a lot of messaging around new customers only, which is not great for our current customers. So it's this weird conundrum of how do we continue to grow at the rate and put interesting new customer offers out there, but also not alienating our existing customer base at the same time. And that's where we partnered with the NBA last year. We offered a free 3-month trial of NBA League Pass for anyone who signed up to place a wager on FanDuel. But we also gave that to all of our existing customers. It was a unique way, not for us to leverage the NBA and League Pass itself to attract new customers, but for the NBA to be able to tap into our existing customers and help grow viewership on their platform. So it was uniquely beneficial for both of us, but also allowed us to take care of our existing customers and new customers in the same way. So we need to continually innovate on the types of offers we have out there and be more all-inclusive.
Excellent. Kat, as we were talking, you talked a lot more about how you are developing different segments of fan bases. You're seeing different reaction and different attraction from various segments. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing there?
Yeah, sure. I think if I were to distill down some of our growth areas, they are probably not dissimilar from where almost everyone is focused right now. I mean, we are based here in LA, so there's always the Latino market that will be rather prominent. It is a unique competitive advantage for us and for the NFL. Youth and women, surprisingly shocker. You're just back in market for our 8th year. I told you this story. On Christmas Day, we played the Denver Broncos. It was our Nickness game, our Nickelodeon telecast, and this incredible family with this family of 4, this joyful, effervescent, bubbling over little boy comes up running into the stadium, so excited to be there. Trailing behind him, his sister, his mom and his dad. And his dad's got like a kind of solemn face on him. And they are jacked, no joke, head to toe, one of my best merch customers, head to toe in Rams gear. And you can see Dad kind of like trailing into the building. And I go, I'm so glad you could spend Christmas with us. I'm so excited. Is this your first experience? And he goes, no. Dad says, no. My son, I don't know how you got him, but you showed up at his school, and now he's a Rams fan. The only thing he wanted for Christmas was to go to the game. And I thought that was going to be okay. Until I realized that he expected us all to dress up as Rams fans. I was like, it's not Halloween, it's Christmas. And he is a Green Bay Packers fan, and begrudgingly put on the Royal and Soul as he was supposed to for his son, and made it out as an excursion for Christmas. And so I think about those moments where that son will never forget his Christmas. His father will remember the day that he will put on a Cooper Cup jersey, begrudgingly, but still owns it, didn't light it on fire, and saw one of the most incredible Rams blowouts of the season. And both the kids got virtually slimed. We said because their gear was brand new, we would not actually send them into the Shaboozinator and get actually slimed. Hopefully everyone's okay back there. And so, I think those are the types of things where when we start thinking about whether or not we're making a difference to these growth audiences, I think of those moments and I say, we have to do more. We have to find new ways, because getting those kinds of emotional experiences coalesced into people's history will define fandom for years to come.
Yeah, and I love where you talked about, when we were talking about just being a generational fan, and what does that mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, when you see that passing of the torch from generation to generation, my husband desperately wanted to pass his Bears fandom down to my girls. Let's clearly say that didn't happen, but they are stoked to be on their new fandom train with the Rams. And at the Rams, you get a game ball for your very first win as an employee, and mine was week 1 of 2021, where the Rams whooped on the Chicago Bears. So that means Saturday when he leaves for work.
We've got a lot more to talk about, but we only have a couple minutes, so I wanted to see if anyone here had a question. Yes.
Yes, Alexandre Calais, RTL, the largest broadcaster in Germany. So the NFL is expanding in Europe. We have the rights. What about the Rams when it comes to this segment that you're looking for?
I mean, I certainly think that the NFL has endeavors to globally dominate as best it can. Each of us as individual clubs have worked very hard to build international strategies and bid for certain international markets. The Rams would love to play in Germany. It is not one of the markets that we currently hold, so we hold international home marketing rights to Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, and China as being core feeder markets into the LA area, but certainly I think we would expand that in the next decade for sure.
There's a deal to be done
There is a deal. Brandon and Bitters is where deals get done.
More questions? Oh, one back here.
I thought I was a Patriots fan because I grew up in Boston and, you know, was rising with the Tom Brady dynasty. And then when he switched over to the Buccaneers, I realized that I had to expand my heart to also include the Buccaneers into my fandom. Have you guys wrestled with this concept of like, are you following the team or are you following the player? What have you seen? What type of data trend have you seen there?
Look, for us, it's definitely both. So we have a lot of people that are huge fans of their particular team or their club. We'll wager on them every week. But now, as player props are becoming more regular and more easily accessible across all platforms, there's an easier ability to be just a fan of an individual and follow them as they go and wager on their individual performance. So that is a much bigger growing segment of bets that we see on the platform, especially as you think about same game parlays are huge. You pick multiple bets within the same game, and if they all hit, you put a little money in, you get a big payout afterwards if you win. But most of those are picking your individual and favorite players. So it's really across the board for us, but I'm not sure if you want to add.
Yeah, we see that in the gaming space as well, because in esports we see obviously people following individual teams within leagues, and then they're following and then the gamers can become creators and hugely influential within the communities that they follow. So you've got this need to be very flexible in that and not be very dogged about it, because obviously they're moving within their opportunities as individual players and professionals to evolve how they work with their band communities.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I absolutely, when you said I've been a Patriot fan, I'm like, he's a Tom Brady fan. And that's okay. I think that we as brands and particularly as teams need to understand that. And I think that has absolutely shifted our content strategy for fans, right? In Women's Empowerment Month. We used it as an opportunity to tell Matthew's story as the girl dad of 4 girls, right? And why he made the ownership investment decision in Angel City and where that comes from. Those are not things, Matthew's not on social media despite, many efforts on my part. But it's the nature of how people are following sports, and the one thing that I think the Rams are uniquely poised to do is give access to those stories, give access to understanding who these players are with their helmets off, because that creates a different level of fandom and engagement where you're invested in a person who is one member of a team sport that can only be successful when all the individuals come together. So when you marry the Sean McVay mantra of we not me together with these individual stories, you can build that tapestry of storytelling that defines and reinforces who we are as an organization.
Last question. Sold.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you to the panelists up here. Definitely appreciate the insight into the fandom.